Well, hello, AJA community. So glad you're joining us for this module with Lama Tashi Nyima. So Tashi is a vegan Buddhist monk and an animal rights advocate. Woo! He leads the Universal Compassion Buddhist congregation with sanghas in North and South America. He's originally from Puerto Rico, but now resides in Texas, where he also works with prisoners on death row and helps in the work to abolish the death penalty. For more than 3 decades, Tashi has shared non-sectarian Dharma teachings in person, through social media and virtual platforms, and he leads several meditation retreats for animal rights activists throughout the year. So, Tashi, I want to give you a warm welcome to Animal Justice Academy. We are so very appreciative to have you and your love and your wisdom and your sense of humor here. I had the pleasure of doing an animal advocate retreat with you just a couple of months ago, and you were just a delight to me, a hidden gem.
Thank you.
So Tashi, I think I let on a little bit during the retreat, but I was a practicing Buddhist for quite a while, and I moved away from calling myself a Buddhist, but I haven't moved away from living it. And so being able to meet a Buddhist monk who is also a vegan and an animal rights advocate, like I almost dropped on the floor. Well, I already was on my cushion, so I was on the floor. Tell us a little bit about, you've been an AR advocate since 1968. Can you share a little bit about what got you there, okay? And what it's been like to be a vegan Tibetan Buddhist monk?
Well, first of all, I'm not very good with dates, so everything is kind of a blur. But actually, I think, I've been thinking back, and I think it all started, I used to have a little rabbit companion when I was a child. And I loved that rabbit very, very much. And one day I came home and my father had him for dinner. And I think that was the start. I started refusing to eat anything with meat. And I started, speaking up about it, and not to the delight of my family. My mother started calling me my little man from China because I would only eat white rice. And then as, the years went by and I started reading more and seeing more, I just couldn't take the suffering of animals for no reason whatsoever. I grew up in Puerto Rico. There's so many fruits, so many root vegetables, so much rice, so much everything. I mean, why need to do this? And then I actually I went to I studied with the Jesuits, Catholic, for many, many years. And there I could also see the contradiction between all this preaching about love and kindness and what was served, right, for lunch and dinner and breakfast. And so eventually when I left, I just didn't feel at ease there in that faith tradition. And I'll just jump ahead. When I started hearing the Buddhist teachings, it resonated with me, and it began my transition. And I was very fortunate to meet a teacher of the Jonang lineage. The Jonang have been vegan since the 15th century. Wow. And that's quite an achievement in Tibet with, the growing season is 3 months long. Dolpopa, one of our great teachers, published very, very early in the 15th century a text called Prohibition of Meat. So that reinforced my tendencies, and I've been trying very hard to first get other Buddhists to recognize that is the fundamental teaching. Right? It's the very first precept. My teacher, my Lama, used to say, if you don't observe the first precept, don't worry about the rest.
And
Once
can you
you've
share
killed,
that first precept with others just so they know?
the first precept is to abstain from killing, from depriving others of life. He said, if you don't observe the first precept, if they're already dead, they don't care if you lie to them, if you steal from them, they're already dead. So that is the basis. The very first precept must be observed at all costs. So then I tried to instill this in other Buddhists. I was one of the founding members of Dharma Voices for Animals. I was on the board, and I worked with them for some time. But I wanted to work more with activists, with people who were actually in the trenches. And I was fortunate enough to come in contact with Ari Nessel and other people from the Pollination Project, from other organizations. And we started doing these meditation retreats for animal rights activists. And I think we've completed 7 already. And we are now planning one in Portuguese for Brazil coming up in February. And we will keep doing 2 in English and 2 in Spanish going on. So that's a very brief, very brief introduction to why I'm so involved in this. I honestly believe that if we don't acknowledge our immense debt to animals, to non-human animals, and start treating them with kindness, we are facing our own extinction.
Yeah. As if we didn't need more reasons to be kind to animals. It directly affects the human animals.
Yes.
Yeah. So, these animal advocate meditation retreats that you've been doing, obviously there is something not just in you that believes that meditation can be very vital for animal rights advocates, but other people. And so can you speak a little bit about why you are such a proponent of meditative practices for activists?
Well, we can't approach a more peaceful world if we're not at peace ourselves. And that is the essence of it. There's nothing magical about meditation. Meditation is basically just the practice of cultivating our own peace and our own ability to see clearly. If we don't have that, we're going to make many mistakes. And one of the things, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but one of the things that really hurts me is when I see animal rights activists who hate humans and who enjoy the suffering of hunters or bullfighters and we are animals too, and we cannot substitute one form of violence and oppression for another form of violence and oppression, because then the cycle just continues. Right? The problem is this idea that somehow somebody is more important than other, and that person's life and liberty and enjoyment is superior to somebody else's. And whether that other person is a non-human animal or a human animal, it's all the same. So we need to cultivate that peace and that clarity so that we can actually be effective.
How does meditation cultivate that peace and clarity? I mean, for a lot of people that just sort of toy with meditation, they sit down and it's just chaotic, they're like, I'm done. That was the most uncomfortable, most unpeaceful, thing I've ever done. So how does that work?
Well, that is a fact that usually that is the first experience with meditation. But it's not that meditation has made you agitated. It's that you're always agitated like that. And in meditation, you start noticing it. And if we don't actually persevere in the practice, what we're going to do is we're going to carry that level of agitation with us wherever we go. So yes, in the beginning, you have to sit there and acknowledge, wow, I do have 1,000 thoughts a minute. And some of them are weird. Some of them are wild. right? And you just sit with them. And in meditation, we don't try to empty the mind. No, if you empty your mind completely, then you'll become a stone, right? No, what we do is we don't engage. And you just watch them. They come and they go. And if you don't hold them, if you don't engage with them, they just go away like birds flying in your line of sight, right? And they leave no trace. It takes practice, it takes perseverance, but it's not an uncomfortable thing. One of the things that I would like people to understand is that, we don't expect you to sit down and meditate for hours at a time. We've always said that it is better to have short, pleasant meditation sessions than to have long, unbearable ones, right?
Yeah.
So, start little by little. 5 minutes is good. And if you can do 2 sessions of 5 minutes in a day, that's wonderful. When you feel comfortable with that, maybe start doing 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and so on until you're comfortable with the time that you're spending. Now, the important thing about meditation is meditation practice, and we call it practice, is practice for the rest of your day. It's not, it's not that we should levitate when you're meditating and then you get off from the cushion or the chair and you snap at people and you scream at people. That is, if you were levitating and you do that when you come off the cushion, that was a terrible meditation. If you struggle during your meditation practice and you get up and you feel kindness and compassion towards others, that was a successful meditation practice. So we need to shift our judgment of the success or failure of our meditation from the cushion to everyday life. If I'm a better person, if I am a calmer person, if I am a kinder person, then my meditation is working. If I am angry and upset all the time, my meditation is not working.
And a lot of people have, meditation seems shrouded in secrecy and mystery for them. And really at the end of the day, you sit or walk and you breathe and you pay attention to your breath. Can you break it down? Can you demystify it a little bit more? And are there other ways of doing meditation other than sitting on a cushion?
Of course. There are 3 components. And the components, we call them 3 gates, right? There's the body, there's the breath, which is energy, and there's the mind. And most often, most of us live in at least 3 places at once, right? The body is somewhere, the emotions are running wild, and the mind is shopping on Amazon, right? And that's sadly a fact. So the purpose of meditation is to align the body, the breath, and the mind. Now, how do we do that? Of course, there are many different methods of meditation, but we recommend that somebody who's beginning should first settle the body. What does it mean to settle the body? You don't have to sit like a pretzel. You don't have to do anything. Just make sure that your spine is elongated and the chin perhaps a little bit tucked in so that you don't have, this kind of curvature. And the idea is that, if you don't have any twists or turns, your energy will flow better. So first settle the body, then settle the breath. What do we mean by that? The breath should be regular, continuous, deep, without pushing or pulling, without stops, without holding, so that your energy can flow smoothly. And then finally, the mind needs to be focused. Right? Focused mind means not going here and there. It can be focused on the breath. If you're walking, it can be focused on your walking, but you have to choose something. Right?
One focus point.
And of course, during our meditation retreats, we actually present 12 different forms of meditation. Some people prefer mantras, some people prefer a visual object. It doesn't really matter. As long as you can do those three things, settle the body, settle the breath, and settle the mind, that's all it takes. It is not difficult. Uh, if you find it difficult, that means that you have to try another method. That's all it means, right?
Yeah. Or to also to realize that there's, it is going to maybe feel uncomfortable to begin with, Yeah.
Like everything. Like,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
first time you got on a bicycle.
And you're so right when you talk about what you practice on in the meditation is what trains you for life, because learning to relax around it, learning to be here now, and to be able to take that out, and learning to be kind to yourself while you're doing it, I guess. Right. Yeah,
that's an important thing. One of the reasons why I really, really enjoy sharing meditation with animal rights activists is that we notice suffering perhaps more frequently and more deeply than other people, because we're attuned to it. And it's a heavy burden to carry. And we need to take care of ourselves also, and to find a little bit of rest within ourselves. Right? And, most of us don't have the funds to go on a spa adventure to the Greek islands. So, but you have your little portable paradise. You can go anywhere and sit down somewhere or walk in a pleasant place and rest your mind, rest from your burdens. It's not an escape. On the contrary, it's a preparation. It's becoming stronger and becoming more capable of helping others.
I love that. And I love the portable paradise. That's amazing. Well, and so there might be a lot of animal advocates listening to this right now, or watching this right now, that are thinking, oh my God, there are billions of animals that need saving here. I can't afford this time. I can't afford, who am I to take this time, to take care of myself? What would you say to them?
Well, in everything that we do, we have to acknowledge that there is preparation before there is execution, right? Typical example is, how do you shoot an arrow for sport, not for hunting, right? You first have to pull back. What happens if you just place the arrow and you let it go without pulling back? Nothing, it just falls flat. So you have to pull back the arrow in preparation for letting it go. And that is true of every human endeavor, right? We have to prepare ourselves, we have to strengthen ourselves, we have to have the ability to give. If we don't have something, we can't give it. And one of the things that we see, and one of the reasons why we started this process some years ago, a lot of people in the animal rights movement burn out. I mean, they just completely burn out. They give until they don't have anything to give. And I don't think I'm going to bring this up, even though it's not a popular topic, but there's a lot of internal squabbles in the animal rights movement.
Oh, really?
And I honestly think a lot of it stems from the fact that everybody is kind of burnt out on hyper-vigilance. And if we all took care of ourselves, we'd actually be more able to tolerate differences in strategies. I always say, there's only one thing that Mao Zedong said that I quote: let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? We don't need every animal rights activist to do exactly the same thing. I may not favor some forms, but I respect that other people feel that that's the right thing to do. And, it's just like with laboratory meats and things like that. I will not even try them, but I am happy that they exist.
Absolutely.
Right. I don't even like the the ones that are not actually made from human cells, but like those burgers that even smell like
veggie burgers or
the
Beyond
real
Burgers and things
thing.
like that. Yeah. Of
But I am so happy that they exist
course.
because somebody will need them to make a transition, and that is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
We don't all have to march to the same drummer. Actually, we shouldn't be marching anyway. This is not really a war. This will be decided in our hearts. Okay. How did each one of us, each one of the wonderful people that will be joining this Animal Justice Academy, how did we make the transition? Because in our heart, we came to the conclusion, this is the way to go. So this is not something to be fought out in a battleground. This is something to be perceived and accepted in the heart.
Yeah, the idea of not wanting to be part of a vegan club, wanting to be a part of a vegan world. And so finding the best way to be able to befriend and build bridges as opposed to alienate. Yeah. So speaking of that, you were talking about the arrow and drawing the arrow back for that momentum. Now, a lot of people use anger as that momentum to draw the arrow back. And it does work. I think it can work for a limited time, but eventually that fuel runs out. So tell me, what are the problems of bringing anger, using anger as your motivation, and what are the alternatives? Like what can you dig into when you release the anger? Because I think a lot of activists are afraid if they lose their anger, they're going to lose their boldness.
Right. Well, first of all, there's a misunderstanding that anger gives you energy. And this is not a Buddhist belief. This you can actually even test in a laboratory. Anger does not make us more capable, on the contrary. Anger raises cortisol levels, anger damages liver values, anger actually narrows our field of vision. These are all physiological realities.
Wow.
So, we may feel a push, just like, a child having a tantrum feels, very powerful. But anybody watching the child having a tantrum knows that that's not an expression of power. That's an expression of frustration and inability.
Powerless, almost.
Yes.
Powerlessness. Yeah.
So, again, I recognize that there's a lot going wrong, but does it make me more able to help, or does it disable me? And let me give you an example, because sometimes we're so obsessed with our own little world that we can't see. This is a very common example, but one that perhaps will throw some light. If you are with two friends and there's an emergency, let's say that you're driving and a tire blows out, who would you rather be driving with? Somebody who starts screaming and cursing the tire and cursing the road, or someone who says, do you have a spare? Let me change it, right?
Yeah.
I think we'd all like that guy. Oh, yeah. Right? And then the question that I have to answer is, which guy do you want to be? The one that screams and pulls out his hair? I went through that. And or you want to be the one that solves the issue? And you're much more capable of solving a problem if you have your wits, right? If you have your peace. Actually, when I was a child, I studied judo, right? With a wonderful Japanese teacher. And one of the things that he told us every single day, if you get angry on the tatami, right, on the mat, if you get angry, you will lose. And that's a lesson that I learned, pre-Buddhism, pre-animal rights activism. If you get angry, you lose. even for fighting, anger is not helpful.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're you can be bold and you can strive for something and even defend and fight for something, but I feel like you've always got to do it with some tenderness, some love in your heart.
And also, I mean, what is the result that you want? Right? Because if you act with anger, you will have an angry result. And is that what we want? Again, the question I ask people, do you want to replace the oppression of animals with the oppression of human animals?
Yeah. So we're cultivating compassion here. We're cultivating.
Exactly. The world we want is a compassionate world. Therefore, we need compassionate means to get there.
And so the cultivating of compassion is almost one of our most important duties as an activist.
And it starts with us. Again, you cannot give compassion to others if you don't have compassion for yourself. So it's never wasted time. Right? The time you spend on yourself, and I'm not talking about meditating, 17 hours a day, right? But and it doesn't have to be formal meditation either, but if you're able to spend some time every day centering yourself so that you can act with clarity, so that you can feel loving kindness and compassion, especially for those who are harmful, you will be in such a better position to be able to help that person and others.
You talked about the squabbling, and I know that the AR community isn't necessarily that different from other activist communities, but we are incredibly sensitive people to be able to tune into the suffering of animals that a lot of people somehow don't in this world. Do you have any ideas of how, as a community, we could be better at resolving conflict within ourselves?
Yes. The first thing is, somehow we expect that because somebody is vegan, they're going to be perfect. And, vegans come from the same community that everybody else comes. I mean, there are very few of us who were born vegan or born into a vegan family, and certainly not into a vegan community. I mean, those people exist, but they are very, very rare.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, how do we expect, just because somebody suddenly becomes a vegan, that they won't have other cultural and personality issues? And we don't make allowance for that. And I'm not saying that we encourage or enable, but I'm saying that we should come into our relationships with other vegans knowing, this person will have traits from the general culture. Lately, I've been a little bit horrified at some of our vegan friends, particularly very famous vegan friends, which I will not name, that have turned into a full-blown conspiracy people.
Conspiracy theorists, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I have to respect that, they live in the same world we do. It's not impossible. So I think that we need to learn that we don't all have to have the same ideas and the same strategies, and we certainly all will not have the same behaviors, even though we may choose not to participate and not to associate too intimately with people who have behaviors we don't like. But that's not a reason to, get into these internecine fights. Fortunately, I see a little bit of of quieting down lately in that regard, maybe because we all have bigger problems to take care of these days. But it's very self-destructive, very self-destructive.
And so there, and there is a big difference, isn't there, around, there are definitely things that we have to check in our community as far as integrity goes, and inclusivity and all that sort of thing. So we can stand up and speak, what are the needs,
Totally.
and we can make, criticisms, but is there a certain quality that we need to bring to all of this in order for it to not descend into this basically division?
I think it's actually not only our right, but our duty to speak up when there's something wrong, particularly within our organizations. But we need to also do it for the benefit of those we are uh, criticizing. That is the difference, right? If we do it to put them down, we have already gone to the other side, right? And it's not going to work. It's just going to create defensiveness. If you approach somebody and you say, perhaps we can consider, changing something here. Maybe we need to change something here, or this is unacceptable. That is fine. But if we go like, damn you, and I will see your head where your feet are,
You're evil and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
it's not going to end well. It's not going to end well.
Yeah.
And also, I think we need to be a little bit more forgiving. What do I mean by that? There are people who have done things that are wrong, and they have recognized it, and they have apologized, and some of them have even stepped down from positions of leadership. And I see people still going after them. Like, I don't know about, your viewers, but I have made many mistakes in my life.
Me too.
And, the important thing is to try not to repeat them. Can you imagine, okay, I was a child, evidently at some point in the past. If I had done something wrong and my mother held it against me for the rest of my life, right? What kind of development would I have had?
You'd never grow. You'd never
You
grow.
never grow.
Yeah.
So we need to give people a second and a third chance. That does not mean that we're passive in the face of a wrong behavior. Never. We don't recommend that. But we need to do it with kindness. We need to do it for their improvement as well as our own. And that's the difference. And I think that when you approach differences with this win-win attitude, like you will be better, you will be safer, you will be more productive, as well as, and I will feel safer, I will feel more comfortable, then we can solve many of our problems. If they cannot be solved, then, we can always vote with our feet.
Yeah. Vote with our feet. Yes.
Vote with your feet.
Boundaries can be put into place, but again, with understanding, some tenderness in our hearts.
Exactly. Then, this place is not for me. And sometimes that's the only way that other people understand that their way is not productive. Well, okay, so if you're going to continue doing that, you're going to do it on your own. And that is perfectly fine. Yeah. Perfectly fine. But I think I actually am encouraged that I am seeing a little bit, actually a significant amount of reduction in that intergroup hostility.
It's all the meditation retreats you've been doing, Tashi.
Well, believe it or not,
I think it's got a ripple effect.
It has a ripple effect because we have purposely invited people from organizations with divergent tactics and strategies. And we have validated them. Like, okay, we may or may not subscribe to the same ideas, but we are in awe of your commitment, in awe of your heart, of your heart's desire for the happiness and the safety of animals. And I have to acknowledge that, right? I may not do the same type of activism that somebody else does, but that doesn't make that person less of a hero to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That person is doing great work, whether I agree with it or not.
Yeah, it took the Martin Luther King and Malcolm X together to, really ignite that movement. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, Tashi, I wish we could talk all day. I hope everybody got a really good sense of your spirit, which is just such a blessing to this community. We're going to include some information below about your sanghas, because Tashi does sanghas very regularly, and they're Buddhist sanghas. And we'll give some more information about some of your other initiatives as well. Thank you so much, Tashi. And yeah, love to you.
Thank you.